So we good?
Yes, sir.
Alrighty. All right. Today we got Nathan with us from Cti. Just wanted to give y'all, my jab welcome. Welcome to Jeff. We wanted to get a few questions out of you guys.
Absolutely.
What y'all do, get more into like who y'all work with
Okay.
and how y'all run y'all projects and things like that.
Okay. So CTI is an AV IT integrator in its most base form. So we are working primarily with corporations. We as a company are strictly business to business. We do not generally get into the home theater market.
Mhm.
We can do it. The technology is very similar, but it's just a different market to play in. So we spend a lot of time with our outside sales staff in my role, meeting with clients, going through spaces, getting measurements on rooms or discussing applications for spaces. And then we come back and determine what technology would be most beneficial for that customer. As I mentioned earlier, we're working with Mercy Medical Center. I've just been messaging back and forth with the salesperson that works with you and I. So we are working with education schools as well. We just got a contract, which I found out yesterday, that we are going to be designing the auditorium for Burlington High School. So we also, not only can we do the design build side of things for customers, we also have a group of people that are working with clients to just assist architects in the design work too. So from a day-to-day basis, my role as the branch director, I'm running a significant number of meetings. Most of my days are made up with meetings, but I also do the systems engineering, the design engineer that Jake mentioned. So if I don't go to the site with a salesperson to meet with a client, a lot of times they have to ask those questions and bring it back to me, and then I'm sitting there discussing the idea of what does that client want the space to do. That's what drives the vast majority of this, because the clients sometimes they have big pictures and we have to understand budgets too. But yeah, that's the gist of my day. Scheduling technicians, scheduling training for technicians from my standpoint. So yeah.
Yeah. Has there ever been like a job that's like too big, or like clients that are like maybe asking for like too much? Anything that's like out of your guys' like particular area, like line of work?
Yeah, I mean, we've had customers that, like I said, we've had customers ask us to do their homes, and unless there's a specific reason for us to do it, it's not really an arena we want to get into.
Mm-hmm.
We've expanded to the point that there's very little. We probably would not, while we could do it, we probably wouldn't take on network control for somebody. We
Yeah.
wouldn't really be trying to take over the network for their facility. That's not. We can certainly do it, but it's not really the wheelhouse of what we're pursuing work to do. So if we have customers, not that we won't, it's a scaling thing for us. If they
Mhm.
need us to pull some low voltage cable in a space, yeah, we can do that. But and we can help connect to their network. But we're not going to sit and set up their network. We set up our own networks,
Mhm.
because every room technically has its own individual network with the stuff that we do. But we're generally not. If we have to be on the client's network, we do it, but it's very challenging because we have to get through a lot of security questions, and we have to understand how they've got things routed and connected, and any VPNs or VLANs or anything else that they're doing. So if the client wants us to be on their network, we're happy to do it. We just have to go through the iterations of questions and make sure we understand where we're going.
So you already mentioned that you guys have like a whole bunch of clients, all that.
Mm-hmm.
I know you guys are in like two different positions in like CTI and all that stuff. So like, what do like you guys do? Like, are you guys like working together in like a sense, or is like you got a certain like area of what you do in your work that doesn't like go into like what he does?
So yeah, Jake is primarily, I mean, probably does a lot of things, but Jake is who I'm going to when I'm trying to understand training levels for my technicians or coordinating training at a manufacturer. I usually go to Jake. Jake handles, like I have a new technician that's starting, and he and I were communicating about the boot camp that he mentioned for the integrators. So we were looking at, he and I were looking at the schedule, figuring out when we can send that technician to do that. So I do cross paths with Jake pretty consistently, and I'm, he and I were talking earlier. I really enjoy interacting with a lot of the new offices, which he gets to do significantly more often than I do. So that's an area I would enjoy doing, but we cross paths primarily for events like this.
Okay. Yeah.
Or if we have a national sales training or something, because Jake's going to have to be involved in that threshold, that kind of work from our standpoint. My day to day, Jake really doesn't get involved in as much. Meeting with the customers, the phone calls, you know, like this morning we were discussing a van that didn't start. That's not really something Jake is going to deal with. We were talking about how to handle the logistics of the fact that, one of our vans needs probably a new battery and they're stuck in Fargo, South Dakota, or North Dakota. So that's not a day. That's more my day to day. Helping the project manager, helping the sales staff, helping the project coordinators, doing my own system design. Um, if we're talking about credits to clients or accounts receivable with clients, I get involved in those conversations too. So,
I do have a question.
Yeah.
How long would you say it takes to succeed in this type of work field? To learn the basic skill set.
I would say, and maybe Jake's got a different opinion. Obviously, I'm on the front line from that standpoint. I would say most of our technicians, if we're looking at that particular field, they're going to need a year to really have a good basis to work from. They're never going to stop learning because the hardware changes, the technology changes. We're constantly trying to get them to, and working with them to train network technology, network topology, audio processing. Because while we have programmers, those technicians also need to be able to have a level of understanding in there, because there's just more of them, and it gives us a better opportunity to complete projects when they have a basis to work from. After that, I mean, if you're in the industry, there's certifications in the industry. I think to get your CTS certification, which is sort of a base certification, you have to be, I think it's 2 years in the industry.
CTSI requires 2 years of.
Okay, is just CTS the
CTS
basic?
just passed the test.
Okay, so the basic CTS, they don't even have a criteria. I misspoke. I thought they did have one. So you could technically get that certification as soon as you're ready from that standpoint. And if you have a CTS certification, you know enough about what we do to really, be an integrated part of where we are. But the progression of roles, like I said, I've been doing this for almost 28 years. The technicians, I would say, as a entry level position, they needed probably a good year to really get their foundation in place.
Right. I know there's this new thing that's, what I'm saying, been going around, this AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you say AI made your job did AI make a difference in your job at all? Because I know it's a lot more common now in technology.
Yeah, absolutely. So from my perspective, I utilize AI to sort of build certain scopes of work, and so I'm integrating with and interfacing with AI from my particular role, more of an interaction with building documentation and things along those lines. We are very much trying to embrace it as a company. We've got essentially, is it two people that are essentially in charge of machine learning, and we're working on how we can integrate AI to assist the sales staff in getting their proposals out, assist the project managers in the logistics and the coordination. But then we also, to your point, the technology, some of the technology we sell, obviously those manufacturers are accessing AI to start doing to utilize that feature set that it can provide within, that particular product line or whatever they've got going on. There's camera manufacturers that have tracking cameras that are utilizing AI to track people.
Right.
So we've got digital processors that they're working on utilizing AI to help filter out background noise in a space so that the processor doesn't. Otherwise, we're having to do that manually. So if we can have that from an automation perspective, obviously it's a time saving for us, and then that's something that can be always on, always there, always listening, and it can adapt to the space live where we don't necessarily have the ability to do that once we integrate.
Right. What exposed you to this type of field? Like, how did you first find out about it, and how old were you? Like, where were you at in life?
my story might be interesting. So my wife, my wife, when we first got married, her family owned a similar business.
Right.
Well, actually, the same industry as a whole. So I kind of got into it from that standpoint. I was finishing up school. I was looking for something to
High
do.
school, high school or
I
college?
was finishing up some work in college. So I was probably, what was it, 97? So I would have been 23. Um, and it definitely isn't something that I ever thought about. It was in some ways just an opportunity for me. I was looking for something different. So I started with that previous company in live events. So I was really just handling rental calls and setting up, live events for people and running the live events. Um, so that was really my first entry into the arena. I didn't really do any of this in high school, and technology when I was in high school was, we're going back to the early 90s, so it's a completely different, arena at this point. But um, I will say over the course of time, it's become much more ingrained as far as interesting and learning, um, and we're always at the forefront of things. I mean, we as an industry have to embrace the technology. Everything that we're doing revolves around it as a whole. So, but yeah, I kind of I took that path, and once I was in it, after a few years, I moved up to sales. After a few more years, I moved up to systems design, and I just kind of progressed from there because I was building up the knowledge to be able to make those progressions. So,
Right.
What because you said you did a lot of live events for your wife's
yep.
family business and
Mhm.
also CCI. You
Yep.
guys do also do live events as
Correct.
well. What were like some like big events that you were a part of where it was like new, not new, but like it was a great experience, like great to yeah, I got this under my belt.
Mm. Um, when I was doing it, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was doing events for like, which I don't even know if they're in business anymore, but like MCI was doing their quarterly business events and some of those things. So we would come in and set up lighting and set up live sound and set up video for them. So the live event side really helped me build a foundation um, to progress over to the integration side because the live event is as described, sort of a temporary integration. So you go through the same iterations of where am I putting the speakers, where am I putting the lights, where am I going to put the displays, et cetera, et cetera. It's just a sort of a forefather to the integration side of things. As far as live events that we're doing now, I don't spend a ton of time around there, but I tend to hear about a lot of them. We do a lot of work with like Boeing. Every time I believe they roll out a new airplane, we're usually setting up the lighting and um, the microphones, the sound systems while they roll out the new F-15 or the new F-18 or whatever they've got going on. I know that the live events team has done some really cool things with pixel mapping where they've been able to project onto, I think they were at a car event, and they were pixel mapping a projector onto a car, so that they could put the graphics on the car and then change those, but they had to, you have to lay that out to the shape of the car. So the live events team gets to do a lot of cool stuff too, um, that the integrators don't necessarily, the integration side doesn't necessarily live on, but it's definitely a great entry into the arena. And if people, if you really like interacting with the customers in that fashion, it's a great thing to do, just generally speaking. So
That's great. That's great. Probably a couple more questions here. I have like, what would you say was the biggest party that you ever had to deal with? Like biggest company or celebrity maybe? Like, what would you say is the biggest
president,
president? Right. Which one?
George, we were doing live events when Clinton was going through his reelection. So I got
Right.
involved a little bit on that end. That was a live event thing while I was still doing that. So that's for me probably. Not that I spent time talking to President Clinton, but you were just around that, that whole process, the Secret Service, everybody that was involved in moving um, somebody like that around the country. So from an individual perspective, that's probably been, I mean, there's only so many presidents, so it's probably the pinnacle for what I've even been close to. Um, as far as businesses are concerned, we've done work with John Deere, we've done work with Caterpillar, we've done work with PayPal, Google, Apple. I mean, at some point, I think our organization has probably had their hands in a lot of different a lot of different clients from that standpoint. So, for me, John Deere, I've tended to be pretty regional. So a lot of my experience is we've got some customers that are financial institutions. We've got banks. We've got a lot of that base that we work from. So, but yeah, as far as an individual, it would probably be the president.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie.
Right. Like they got the whole
Secret
president
Service.
working with
Yeah,
them.
it was a little intimidating because they roll in their own technology team too, and they're like, well, we want it to do this and this. So you're really just, and it's probably different now because we're going back a ways. Actually, is it? Maybe it wasn't even Clinton. Maybe it was Bush. Anyways, but
It was one of them.
Yeah, it was one of them. I'm old enough to. I'm getting them all confused anymore. But yeah, they have the whole technology team that comes in ahead of time. If you're going to have staff that's working the event, you got to go through security clearance with the Secret Service and whatnot. So it was definitely an experience that
I can see how that could be intimidating.
Yeah, right. So what was it like working with their technology team? Or did y'all work with them at all?
We do work with them, and even when we work with, like Department of Defense, they have specific expectations and guidelines that we have to follow, not just from our staff being able to pass security tests and security clearance, but they want specific technology, specific hardware. They want to use it in a specific way. It's usually pretty straightforward. They aren't really speaking. We're all speaking the same language, so we can understand when they're asking us to. I've got to be thinking this through a little bit. There's to Jake's point, like if we're going to be bringing or providing any kind of computer service or anything along those lines, they're going to want to either confirm that it's never been on the internet. They're going to want to do their own checks on that security stuff, or they're going to provide their own where we can't do it. We're generally never going to have our equipment on their network. That's been my experience. Their networks are usually very secure, but we have to make sure ours are secure as well.
How did you find CTI? Like how'd you get into it and all that?
So I was a high school teacher for over a decade, and
Yeah.
I kind of thought that's what I was just going to keep doing. And COVID was pretty tough for a school perspective, just all the changes and students being at home and trying to make that work in the classroom. And I actually had a friend of mine who worked at CTI that just kind of kept hearing me talk about teaching and was just over and over like, you should come to CTI. And then it just kind of worked out that there was an education role for me. So
Yeah.
I really thought as a teacher that my skill set was really limited to being in a classroom, but it's been really rewarding to find out that what makes a good teacher makes a good professional, really, and a lot of those skills transferred over.
So is there anything that you transferred from teaching that you used into for your training skills at CTI?
Well, definitely. So, CTI has and really any company's going to have a really wide range of ages and people, the way that they learn and thinking about those things and trying to make things as accessible to everybody is beneficial. And if you think about the way that most people consume media now, it's really short videos and small segments instead of, an hour-long video that they have to sit and digest at one time. So I've been a really big proponent of cutting up courses and things to be really short so you can get whatever the main point was, do a quick check of assessment, and then move on to the next thing after that. And just being cognizant of people's styles and their time and trying to think about all those things building forward. I think also just organizationally, it's really helped, being somebody who had to plan lesson plans and curriculums and how we were going to move through to a unit, kind of having the end goal in mind has really helped frame a lot of the courses and planning that we've done. So if we think about what the end product is first, where we want our employees to go, then we can kind of work backwards about what do we need to get them there. And I think that's helped build sustainable and good training programs.
All right, yeah. This is probably my last one here, but you know what I'm saying? I'm curious about it. So what's boot camp really like? for
So-
like all the incoming like the trainees and stuff like that, all the managers?
Yeah, so a little background there. Every time we hire new technicians, really wherever they are in the company, we send them to St. Louis for a week, and they get to do a hands-on skill training where our mission statement is that we want them to learn to be safe, comfortable, and confident. We can't impact or impart a whole, year or career's worth of information over the course of a week, but our goal really is just to provide those foundational skills that make people flexible and understand that they're going to encounter different things. So when we typically have our technicians travel in on a Monday, and then they stay the night, we arrange their hotel and their travel and everything in that case. And then we typically have a van ready to take them to where our corporate office is. And we've turned what used to be our rack build area into a whole classroom back there where it's got tons of new technology and really an opportunity to practice a lot of the skills that our technicians are going to utilize in the field, but in a safe space. So when they're cutting into drywall, it's not a client, so they don't have to worry about screwing something up. And they're able to cut in, and if they make a mistake, they make a mistake. But I'm really proud of the curriculum we've developed because it gives them basic information about CTI and how to be safe, and really trying to encourage our employees to have a sense of self-preservation. I mean, at the end of the day, you're the one who goes home, and CTI doesn't want our employees to get hurt, but at the same time, you're the one who has to bear the front of that injury. So being cognizant of that, when we're young, we often think we're invincible and nothing bad can happen to us, and until something bad does happen to us. So we want people to be safe, but then we have them practice terminations and look at the drawings that they're going to encounter in the field and do a display project. And it's really set up in a way that we ask people to demonstrate the behaviors that they've been trained or that they're utilizing, and then we can just really show them ways to be more efficient and things that can make their job easier and tricks among that process. But another huge part of it, and why even technicians who have experience, I think it's still valuable to come to boot camp, is that you get time to feel the company experience. We're traveling you to our corporate headquarters. You're getting to meet the officers of our company, the ones who make those big decisions for everybody. They're taking time out of their day to come in and talk and interact with you. We're taking you out to meals and trying to give you a good time while you're there. We've certainly taken technicians to Cardinals games in St. Louis, which is kind of fun to be able to go do things like that. So I think it's just a really wonderful opportunity to learn about CTI, but also about your job and how to be better at it. So.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
What school did you teach at?
So I've taught at 3 different high schools. Lorenz Marathon was the first. It was way up in the northwest corner of Iowa, just this little bitty school. The year I left, the graduating class would have been 14. So about as small as you can get. And then I spent most of my career at Colfax Mingo, which is right off Interstate 80. There's about 60 students every graduating class. And then my last year I was at Boone High School, which is just a little bit further west of Ames. So I got a really, really rural to a pretty big size school by the time we got in there. And I did lots of coaching. I was a cross-country coach for a really long time. So I got to experience a lot of the benefits of being in a school situation. And I'm really happy that I've, formed the relationship I have with IJAG to get me back into classrooms and be able to do stuff like this.
Yeah.
Well, that's nice. I appreciate y'all coming.
Yeah, appreciate
nice
y'all
having
for
you
coming
on the
in.
podcast, man. I hope to see y'all in the future. I hope your future is very bright,
Yeah.
And glad having you.
Yep. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.